What we're going to look at just now is what I would call a takeoff Lite application. So it's a little bit maybe more straightforward to get your head around compared to a full takeoff workflow, which we've documented elsewhere. It's less powerful. It's potentially less. It doesn't have the same speed as doing a full takeoff workflow, but it's maybe just a little bit easier to get your head around. So it's maybe not a bad first step towards doing full takeoffs. So what we've got here is a topo surface with various demolition surfaces. So what we've got is areas up here where we've got tarmac, and we want to get the underside of that tarmac after it's been stripped out. We've got a concrete area here, we've got some topsoil areas here, and we want to get the underside of that surface for your cut fill calculations. And then what we've also got is just a basic design, and what we want to do is calculate the underside of the construction materials, the formation, to get the cut fill calculations. So in this workflow, one requirement is all the lines need to be part of the surface, and there needs to be lines bounding, not all the way around each individual area, but there needs to be bounding lines between changes of surfaces. And again, they need to be part of the surface, and we need to change all the line types to be surface texture edges. So fairly straightforward when we actually go through it. So let's just turn the design off. And what I've done is I've actually started to draw the bounding lines. So it's in this layer called boundary. And you can see here that I've just basically, if I turn it off again, I've just basically drawn a 3D line string. Doesn't just up to join between these edges of the surfaces. And then what I need to do is, this is a change of surface here, so I'm going to manually draw that as a line string. I'm just going to put it to a layer called boundary, and I'm going to say that that's sharp and texture boundary. And what that does is it tells us it's an edge of a surface. So we just draw that in there. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to new, and I'm going to draw another one in here, which is again another change of surface between these two lines. Easiest way to do this thing in its entirety is if I just grab all these line strings. What I need to do is I need to just grab the line strings, and I need to make sure that they're all set to sharp and texture boundary, if that's what we want to do. We can take it out in some areas. So here, for instance, what I can do is this is, rather than me having to do multiple, I'm just going to say that that's just sharp, so there's no texture boundary in that area there. What we also need to do is make sure that all these lines are part of the surface. So all these additional lines that we've created, we need to make sure that they're part of that topo surface. So we just go to surface members, and we just add them into that topo surface. And then we're ready to add subgrades. Now, before we do that, I'm just going to go into the Material and Site Improvement Manager, and we can see if we expand this out, I've added some of these subgrades just as a site improvement category. So we're keeping it really basic. We're not going into any of the advanced functionality. I've simply got one set to 180mm offset, 200mm offset with a different color, 220 offset, and 400 offset. So very, very basic. And if we want to create a new one, we just right click and create a new one. So there can be any offset to any surface that we want. So what we now need to do is apply these. So we just go to site improvement, and we're just going to say, well, are we applying them to design or the topo surface? Well, at this stage, we're thinking of the topo surface. Don't need to give them names. I definitely recommend you put them in a layer called site improvement, and we'll explain why later. And then we want to choose which offset that we're going to do. And I know that this area is an area of concrete in here, so I'm going to choose 180 offset, and I just click in here. And if I just turn the surface on, we'll see what it's done. So we need to turn the topo surface on, and it's flooded out from. So what we do when we create a site improvement, we put in a node or a seed point, and it will basically flood out that surface until it hits the boundary line. And if we put another one in here, because we took these for the three inner lines here as not being surface textures, we only need a single line, and it will flood through that entire area. So these are all areas where that's a 180 offset to the bottom of the concrete after it's been stripped out. This is a road that's got 200mm strip coming out of there. So we're just going to put in that, and again it floods out until it hits the lines. Same with the footpaths. And then we've got topsoil areas that are being stripped out here. So we just tap in here and tap in here and in here. And we're just colouring that up. And then what we basically have inside here is an area whereby we don't actually have any, this is already demolition stockpiles, which is a construction material in its own right. And this is basically 6F2, so it's ready to go, so we don't need to do any offsets there. So we've applied these site improvements, but we actually haven't yet created any subgrades from them. So if we want to now go to create subgrade up at the top, then we can just call this one a simple topo subgrade. And as I say, we're keeping it very simple at the moment. It's going to be relative to the topo surface. If we had broken up various different types of layers through our makeups, then we could basically choose to actually say something like underside of type 1. But because we just want the underside of this one surface, we can just choose bottom of engineering materials. We're going to call it topo subgrade, and we can just hit apply. And now what we've actually got is we've got two surfaces. So if I just do a surface slicer view again, then as we take a slice through here, we can see that as we're slicing through here, we've got the topsoil strip, which just happens to be the same as the road. And then here we've got no strip here at all. And if we move across to the concrete, so if I do a line through all four different types here, this is the concrete offset, no offset here. Here we've got the underside of road, and here we've got the underside of the where the topsoil's been stripped. So that is our first reference surface for our cut fill. So now what we'll do is we'll jump across to the design surface. So we'll just turn these surfaces off and these surfaces off, and we've got a simple design here. Look at it in 3D. So a simple sort of very simple design. And we're just going to again go to the materials site improvement. This time we're going to apply it to design, and we're going to apply in the middle. We've got 400 to underside to the formation, and then we've got let's say we've got topsoil that we're going to reinstate in these two areas. So once we have applied it, we go to create subgrade. This is going to be, we'll just call this formation, and the reference surface is going to be the design. And again, we want to get the bottom of the engineering materials, and it's the bottom of that material, and hit apply. So if we do a simple slice through here, surface slicer view, and then what we see here, if we just turn on all the surfaces, so we've got design, formation, topo concrete, and topo subgrade. So that's just the topo surface, the topo concrete one. Then we've got our design. We've got the formation, which has got a step in it because there's different depths here. And then that goes down here. We probably want to merge this surface in here, and then we've got the topo surface. If we turn on the other surface, and if we just slice through another area all the way across, then we can see all these different subgrades. So we've got the topo surface, and then we've got an offset to this topo surface here. And then we've got the formation. So if we want to do a cut fill calculation, ultimately we want is the formation to the subgrade surface, which are these two surfaces here. So now that we've got that formed, we can simply go to surfaces, earthworks reports, and we can say we're going to do a surface to surface, and we're going to go from the formation to the topo subgrade and hit OK. And we should see our earthworks report coming up here. So one final thing regarding the site improvements is we've talked about these seed points. So we basically put them in, and that will flood out a surface or a site improvement until it hits a edge of surface texture. If we want to get rid of those, then we just need to find these seed points, and if we put them in a layer that makes sense, so we just turn off all our layers. We'll keep the surfaces on. So we'll turn all off our layers and we see our site improvements. Then we can see these seed points. If I want to get rid of that, I just select it, hit delete, and that site improvement will disappear. So these seed points are very, very important in that particular, in this particular workflow. So that's a quick overview on how to do this takeoff Lite workflow, and hopefully it would be a stepping stone towards doing the full takeoff workflow. The main disadvantages of this compared to doing the full takeoff workflow is that all the strings need to be 3D. So if you've got 2D strings, then you would need to drape them onto the surface. All these strings need to be, so we just click select one of these, if we just turn the layers on. So all the strings must be part of the surface. So this line string here, it must be part of the particular surface it belongs to. So we need to go into surface members and add them. And then the surface sharpness, if that line is between different surface types, then that line must be set to a surface sharpness of sharp and texture boundary. But it's a fairly straightforward workflow and pretty powerful. Okay, many thanks.